This is Monocle on Design, a show where we discuss everything from architecture and craft to furniture and fashion. I'm Nick Manise. On today's program, we hear about Italian polymath Gabriele Devecchi. And we also kick off our summer series highlighting design essentials for the season. Plus, we meet some of the team at the Portuguese wool specialists Burel Factory. All that coming up on Monocle on Design. To kick off today's program, Monocle's Rome correspondent David Pleasant joins me in the studio to discuss his recent podcast, Arganto. It focuses on the life and legacy of the Italian polymath, silversmith and designer Gabriele Devecchi. The project was launched at the Triennale Museum, a huge institution in Milan, and that's particularly fitting because many of Devecchi's, or Gabriele's, however we want to, refer to him as, many of his designs are featured there. David, welcome. To kick it off, and maybe to begin, how did the project Arganto come about?
He had three children who I worked with very closely, and they set up an archivio, a foundation for his archive, in Milan, in the family house on Via Trieste, which is an amazing kind of townhouse.
And a super important way to, I guess, preserve his legacy. Work and his legacy.
Exactly. And they very cleverly and craftily applied for funding at the Italian Council of the Ministry of Culture. And for the first time, they offered grants money for podcasts. So it's a really new format, quite adventurous really of the ministry to offer that. And the archive won the grant. And then they recruited me to produce, write, narrate the podcast with the help of a design writer, a critic in his own right, Alberto Saibene. And we worked together to create this 6-part series.
I mean, it's an amazing way, I guess, to, as we were talking about that archive, I guess, extend this legacy. I mean, we're about to dive into some clips from the piece, but why is it important for people to hear it?
I think design is quite a funny sector. It's not really something that's looked at as in depth as, say, culture or history of art. The history of design is still quite a new field, and I think there's very few ways of hearing these kind of stories. I can't really think of any podcasts or documentaries out there that really kind of go this in depth into the life and work of one figure in the way that you might see with artists or other cultural figures. So design and its importance in Italian culture is maybe underrepresented, and I'm a bit biased, but I think it's a really good opportunity. And it's in English, I should say. So all this Italian content, so there's a lot of translation, a lot of voiceovers. It's a very heavily produced product, if that makes sense. And it's a wonderful opportunity for English speakers to get insights into a very Italian story.
Now, we're going to hear a clip from the first episode, which is called The Ones with Those Little Machines. David, tell us, who are we going to hear from now?
Now we're going to hear from Giovanni Anceschi, one of the surviving members of the Gruppo T.
When we appeared on the art scene, we were genuinely intimidating. We attended exhibitions of figurative works and made fun of them. We said exactly what we thought. The public was actually fine with it. You know who took offense? Of course, it was the critics, the cultural go-betweens. No, they couldn't grasp what we were doing. And so they coined this patronizing term for us, labeling us the ones with those little machines.
For our Milanese art historian Marco Meneguzzo, there was another innovative aspect to Gruppo T's work. For the first time, he tells us, thanks to the group and a few others like Gruppo N in Padua and some isolated individuals like Bruno Munari, who we heard about, together with Enzo Mari and Umberto Eco, we begin to see kinetic art in the form of programmed art, programmed in the sense of electronic programming, a field in which Italy was the leader thanks to Olivetti. Founded in 1908 in the town of Ivrea in the northern region of Piedmont, it started as a typewriter manufacturer. And by the time of the post-war economic boom, Olivetti became Italy's industrial and technological trailblazer. In 1959, Olivetti launched the Elea 9003, one of the world's first mainframe computers. In April 1962, and right at the pinnacle of Olivetti's successes, the Arte Programmata, or Programmed Art exhibition, opened in the company's showroom in Milan. Organised by Bruno Minari with works by himself, Gruppo T, Gruppo N and Enzo Mari.
I mean, David, tell us a little bit about that clip. There's a lot going on there. You talk about the art scene, there's discussions about technology, and I guess we're seeing this coming together of art, design, craft, technological innovation. Gruppo T, who are they?
Yeah.
Unpack it for us.
I know, and I think it goes back to your first question about why Gabriele Devecchi hasn't received that much attention until now. It's a really complicated story. It's a complicated period of time. There's a lot of things happening in 1962. It's still the kind of post-war revival of Europe was happening, and there's technological leaps and bounds. And together with that, there's a kind of more political way of looking at art. So I think I chose that clip because I wanted to talk about Gruppo T, because Gabriele Devecchi, at the age of 20, he didn't actually go to art college. He wanted to. His father, the designer and craftsman, Pierino, didn't let him. So he kind of rebelled and joined this group of artists informally, even though he didn't go to art school. And it's quite interesting, from a designer, he went into cutting-edge contemporary art. And that was how he began his career. And that was really, in a weird way, to inform his design career when he went back into the studio of his father. So there's this kind of really interesting dialogue happening between contemporary art, contemporary culture and design. The mention of Olivetti is really interesting as well, because it's just so astounding to think that a technology company, imagine like Apple today sponsoring a contemporary art show in the Galleria Vittorio Emanuele in Milan, where the Prada store can be found today. That amazing space, that was where Arte Programmata and Gruppo T had their first show, which was put on by Olivetti, a company that made computers. And again, that technical collaboration was also something that informed Devecchi. So it's a complicated picture, I know, but bear with me because I think it gets clearer.
And it will get clearer. But I guess the one thing I want to just pick up on there, almost before we go to this next clip, is Devecchi really sounded like he kind of set the blueprint for what a modern contemporary designer could be. In this period, doing something that I guess these multi-hyphenates try and do today. He's working with big groups like Olivetti. He's got his own creative group called Gruppo T, and the artists he works with. He's doing everything from design through to art. He's really, maybe is he the first multi-hyphenate?
Or like you might say polymath or polyglot. He really spoke many different languages, metaphorically. But I think he kind of did it gradually and organically, and like many people, and he had a very particular approach to how he designed as a designer. He was a craftsman, a draftsman. Lots of people who we met and interviewed said how good at drawing he was, how his drawings were so charismatic and so sort of intense, again showing his more kind of artistic rather than industrial design prowess. So yeah, he's a really complicated, interesting figure.
Amazing. Well, we're going to hear from another clip now.
Yeah, so Antti Pansera is not only a historian of design, she was also a family friend, a close friend of Gabriele Devecchi. So she knew him intimately, and she also knew his father, Pierino, who she begins by talking about now.
Pierino had achieved a lot of success because the pieces at the Triennale had caused a sensation. They were truly innovative. The innovation was already in Pierino, but in my opinion, over the years, Gabriele skillfully observed the techniques and nuances of Pierino's workshop, infusing his own innovations and gradually evolving towards an entirely distinct style of design.
In the
1960s, both Gabriele and Piero's design reflect a shift towards simplicity, aligning with the era's economic boom. Silverware shops evolve into jewellery-like stores, departing from traditional artisanal workshops. By the late 1960s, bourgeois shopping habits in Milan had changed, with silver cutlery sets falling out of fashion, prompting a need for innovation. The 1972 MoMA exhibition, Italy, the New Domestic Landscape, stands as a watershed moment in Italian design history. Not only did it launch the term design to a global audience, but it also sparked a boomerang effect, introducing, in turn, the concept back to Italy. Previously, this word had only been seen in furniture and decor magazines. Does this adoption of the English term design in Italy underscore the ongoing debate between craft and artisanship? Does it perhaps indicate a lack of a satisfying solution within the Italian language? Perhaps. But in 1970, 2 years before that MoMA exhibition, and after collaborating with his wife Corina Morandi, Gabriele launched the Arganto collection, the inspiration for our podcast's name.
I mean, David, let's continue that thread there. Tell us about the Arganto collection.
He did that together with his wife Corina. She was an architect, urban planner, intellectual, political activist in the Milan of the 60s and 70s. And this was the first and only time that she collaborated with her husband, creatively speaking. They created this really, I don't want to use the word polished because it sounds a bit too easy to describe silver as being polished, but it's a very clean collection. And even the branding, the catalogues that they produced are completely perfect and very much, it was an all-round design. So the fonts that they used, the catalogue, the illustrations of the pieces, an all-round, what we would come to see as the classic Italian design product later on. So they produce these objects in silver that are kind of really stark for their simplicity and lots of curves. He would design with the machinery and tools in mind, with the kind of most minimum impact or working to the maximum effect. So these really kind of stunning, reflective pieces that kind of look really striking today.
And it sounds like there's a sort of recognition that it's one thing to produce an amazing piece of silverware, but it's another thing to have that sit within a considered environment where you talk about typography there, you talk about the presentation of the product as well. Is that something that modern designers or contemporary designers perhaps can learn from Gabriele and the work that he was doing here?
Yeah, I think a holistic approach to your product is completely essential. And I think sadly a lot of companies, and maybe some of those legacy companies, even the Devecchi brand itself, that isn't owned by the family, it was sold some years ago, they're kind of failing to recognize that the whole holistic approach that you have to have as a design brand. You're selling a lifestyle, you're selling a vision of aesthetics. And so your shop space, that's really vital as well. In the 70s, 80s, the retail spaces were just fantastic. Devecchi showed us how important it is to look at the whole round of design.
And maybe that's a nice way to sort of bring this home. Why don't we hear from Devecchi himself?
A big part of this series is allowing the words of Devecchi himself to be heard. It's quite tricky as he didn't do many recordings. There's no audiovisual recordings. There's no documentary of Devecchi. There's a few little clips here and there, but we used an actor to voice various diaries and writings of Devecchi that he made himself. And one episode is entirely an imaginary interview with Devecchi and myself, which was really, it was an interesting detour in my work producing podcasts. That was really a dramatization. It felt like I was working on The Archers or something, but that was fun. But this is a more straightforward read-through by actor Sean Hart voicing the words of Gabriele Devecchi himself.
My ideological tension was tied up with the principles of design, leading me to try to understand silver and discover a contemporary use for it. With this material, which in the collective imagination had an aristocratic use, the challenge was to broaden its audience, making it reproducible in large numbers and at low cost. This paradox gave rise to the research on the specifics of silversmithing. While working on silver sculptures and taking away everything extraneous to the message, that is, the form from the object, I noticed that the surface became a mirror. Isn't one of the principles of design the use of a material appropriate to the purpose?
Gabriele continues to reflect on the reflective properties of silver in the book La lingua degli specchi.
I think I realised the photoreactivity of silver precisely because of the investigative attitude I inherited from artistic experimentation. The reflective qualities depend on the fact that silver is photoreactive, meaning it allows for the modulation of light and thus manipulation of the image.
I really liked how Devecchi started that by talking about needing to understand silver, understand the material. I mean, this is a man that I guess understood his place in the design world in many ways.
Yeah, it's a really complicated position that he had because, of course, he had his father and Piero Devecchi throughout the series and all our interviews. He was a really quite problematic, overbearing figure. I mean, he was a committed fascist. He, as many people were in 1930s Milan. But then in that post-war era, that was a problematic legacy in history. And so I think Gabriele tried to both go beyond his father and respect his father's work as well. And that is also matched with his approach to silver. I think he really tried to innovate and leave behind his father's legacy and sort of imbue something completely different. But his actual skill, he was a wonderful craftsman, and I saw some of the objects that he and his father would make together as a sort of bonding experience. Coconut shells embossed with silver. Imagine like a Fabergé egg, but made out of a coconut shell with these wonderful silver elements as well. So these incredible pieces that just show how skilled he was, but he was also an innovator and a contemporary artist.
You mentioned there about him wanting to kind of leave his father's legacy behind and chart his own. It certainly feels like he's done that. I mean, give one final plug for the podcast. How can people confirm this fact?
I think the podcast, as I've maybe said before, not only do you understand one man's career and life, you understand a whole context. I think we love going to Milan, we love talking about Italian design, but there's a lot of it that we maybe take for granted or don't really understand where it came from, why is it such a strong point. Someone like Gabriele Devecchi shows us the roots of that and maybe helps us to understand the present as well of Italian design.
David Pleasant, thank you very much. You can listen to all 6 episodes of the project at argantopodcast.com.
It's summertime. It's the summer series. Monocle Design's Summer Essentials.
Grace Charlton, welcome to the studio and welcome listeners to our summer series. This is going to run the length of August, where we bring a host of, different Monocle contributors into the studio to talk about their summer essentials, the key pieces of design that help them get through summer. What are you bringing to the table, Grace?
Well, I didn't realise I was the first cab out the rank for this, which means I can go for the most obvious answer, which is a fan. And I feel very passionate about this. I don't want to see any plastic fans around me. They need to be metal, sort of industrial looking. Ideally, not even on a pedestal, like on the floor.
Also, I went to handheld fans as like this simple, beautifully crafted little piece that you can maybe tuck into a bag somewhere. You're talking plugged into the wall, ensuring there's airflow across a room.
I'm talking hottest day of the year. We need the big guns. Ideally, it's also unbranded, but I will make an exception for a vintage Bezzoni from the 50s. They look so cool. They almost look like a jet on a plane. They've got a very like space agey aesthetic to them, but you're right, they're probably not energy efficient.
I like the fact that you've referenced the plane propeller there. They look like they're about to take off, and there's an element of risk. There's like a little bit of a sexiness to it in a way. Like it's not. It doesn't.
Don't get your hand caught.
Yeah, it doesn't sugarcoat it for whoever's using it. It's like it has a full open face. It's fully exposed, with a little bit of structural wiring to hold it in place. But you could definitely stick your hand in there, and maybe a trip to the hospital is also on the cards.
Now I look at it more, I do understand why they're not in production anymore.
But I think people need to be trusted. I think this is what we're coming back to. If you want to have beautiful things in your house, sometimes you've got to be willing to take risks. I think that's what's really nice about this, because you compare this to what I've got at home, which is those sort of sleek Dyson standing things where there's no blades. It's nice, but there's not an energy to it in the way that this Pezzoni has one. It's not a piece that you would proudly display, whereas this, it's a little bit of a sculptural piece, but it's also highly functional. Grace, you edit out from the archive section in the Monocle Minute on Design newsletter. That's a lovely plug for our listeners. And every week we look at archive items, and part of it is coming back to like beautiful pieces of design that are maybe overlooked. Have we gone too far away from these exciting, thrilling, propeller-like fans?
Subscribe to the Monocle Minute and you might find out.
It's the summer series. Monocle Designs Summer Essentials. Design Essentials.
In the small village of Montagues, the Portuguese brand Burel Factory has been producing wool textiles since 2013. The company employs local artisans and focuses exclusively on Burel wool, a material that has been present in the region since the 11th century. Products include clothing, acoustic panels, and, more recently, upholstery and furniture finishes. This show's producer, Maylee Evans, met some of the team at the recent Lisbon by Design event. We hear from Maria da Estrela Tomash, the second generation involved in the family company. She shares why Burel Factory began.
It all comes back to the textile in itself and to the shepherds. So it was used as capes for the shepherds to protect them both from the harsh conditions of the winters and also from the summers, because it has great thermal capacities. It is 100% wool, so what they would do is use not only the sheep's milk for the cheese, but also the wool to felt it, boiled, and then create these capes also to protect themselves. And it was used for a long time in the industry, but it was a bit relegated to its capacities, right? It was very harsh to the touch, and you wouldn't love compared to merino wool or any other wool. But what we forget is that it's so sustainable and it has great capabilities, and that's what we found out in the early 2010s. Right after the big financial crisis that hit Europe, a lot of these textile plants were closing down. The village experienced a lot of decreased labor and people would get unemployed, and it was quite depressing times. For my parents, it was crucial to keep this ancient tradition of 1800s looms alive, because all of them were being destroyed and being sold for metal scraps. They slowly started to build something, and they looked at Burel, and before it only had 2-3 colors because it was the natural colors of the sheep, so the white, the brown, and the dark brown, and they gave it light, and now it's more than 80 colors, and then it developed from there. We looked at Burel from its 100% wool capabilities as a great acoustic textile that could get in 3-dimensional shapes and that could really absorb 95% of the sound if you put it in a curtain, perhaps, or a panel or acoustic panel. And then we started to realize that a textile that was once relegated just for the shepherds, no one really wanted to touch it. It was so harsh. Now it's beautiful. It gains a new life. And it really is a piece of art and design.
You've grown up watching this company grow, and we've got some furniture here, but are you starting to get ideas of what you could kind of be doing or exploring? I mean, there are amazing acoustic panels here, but I'm sure now you see that anything's kind of possible.
A lot has been done, and Rui and a lot of designers have so much credit for it. But my mom also, she's a great creative brain, and she's come up with a lot of the 3-dimensional shapes you see here. Also, the seamstresses at the factory, and also even the artisans that work the ancient looms, they also are designers in themselves. For me, what captivates me is this hand-painted Burel, right? And it gains a new life. This is a good direction, also because we recently acquired a dyeing plant, like for dyes, that was in foreclosure, and we had to acquire it for the business. We are our brand because we are produce everything in Portugal, and if we didn't, we had to resort to Spain or further away. We have to innovate, and we are innovating in the natural dyes and in these hand-painted dyes just to try to be more sustainable. Vertical sustainability is what I hope to and aspire to achieve in the future for the company. Big presentations and a lot of great minds come together to think about what is the future of textile, what fibers can we innovate, where can we look. You know, we're looking at bones of animals, we're looking at different types of materials, but we are ignoring wool. And in Portugal now, shepherds don't know what to make out of the wool. they have to burn it. And we're burning the most sustainable fiber that we have. Something that takes the value away from their whole business. So it's sad to see the wool can become something that's worth value to the shepherds. We have to restore the identity and the monetary value of the wool. Something that is harsh to the skin, we have to overcome that and see its potential. And that's what we try to do. We offer a story, we offer sustainability, we offer tradition incorporated with design, and we offer a new creative solution for this problem that we're facing of mass consumption.
Well, my name is Rui Tomás. I'm a creative director from Burel Factory company. I'm also a professor in the University of Lisbon in design. I always try to use these properties of this kind of material, use them in the acoustic panels, at the same time with an artistic look. I try to use the skills of the people we have in our factory, because they stitch it and cut these little pieces all by hand, and they join them and stitch them one by one. It's an incredible job.
Over here we've got a wall hanging piece, we've got 2 pieces of furniture here, a mix of wicker, woods and this Burel fabric. Can you kind of explain to me how these chairs came to be? How did you get inspired to incorporate the wicker and the wool and the wood?
We start to looking around us near our village, Manteigas, and we also find a village named Gonçalo. They have a huge tradition in wicker. And we think, why not use this technique and this craftsmanship to work with us and do something in this mountain feeling.
With the artisans you worked with, was this outside of their comfort zone, making a chair from wicker? What was their response to maybe doing a little bit differently to what they're used to?
Yes, it's very different, but these artists in particular made different kind of things. He do many things in wicker. Imagine a soccer stadium, that kind of incredible things. When I came with this challenge to do these chairs, he told me this is impossible to do. I will not be able to do it. And I convinced him. I stayed 1 week with him in his workshop, and we made it. We are very happy with the results. He told me also he never been doing some techniques in 16 years of work. It's very amazing for me to push them to do this kind of things.
And could you talk to me a little bit about the wood that you've used or some of its properties? I think the joinery in it's beautiful, so maybe just to give listeners a sense of the artistry that you've got here.
I try to design something at some time simple of view, but with very tricky joinery connections. This is a natural solid oak. One of the great aspects of this kind of work is how design can join together these different areas, the joinery, the wicker, and also our fabric.
That was Rui Tomás, and before that, Maria da Estrela Tomás. They were in conversation with Maylee Evans. And that's all for today's show. For more design stories, listen to our 5-minute midweek bonus show, Monocle on Design Extra, which airs on Thursdays. And if you enjoy print, then do pick up a copy of Monocle magazine as well. It's on all good newsstands now. Today's episode was produced and edited by Maylee Evans. I'm Nick Manise, and you can reach me on nm@monocle.com. Thanks for listening.